Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Tea and Cornbread. I'm your host, Sean Johnson.
And I'm Tracy Davis-Johnson.
What's going on, Miss Trey? Thank you. Don't forget to like, share, and comment, and we will look out for you guys later. Have a great day. All right. Hello, and welcome to Tea and Cornbread, a conversation with Sean and Tracy. My name is Sean Johnson. I'm your host.
My name is Tracy Davis-Johnson. I am also your host. Welcome, everyone.
Yes, we are so excited about this conversation. So, Manny, I just want you to know you are our first male on the podcast. So yay.
Welcome.
Yes. This is going to be such a great conversation. We can't wait to just dive in. We have one of the top authors right now on Amazon, right? And you've been interviewed by Black Enterprise. I saw you on the Black Enterprise. I was like, all right. You are also, we didn't say his name, Dr. James Manny Wright, PhD and MBA. Okay, author of Heirs of the Great Migration, How the Past Became the Future. He's also an assistant professor in the Department of Education Leadership at San Diego State. Welcome, James.
Yes,
Manny,
welcome.
we call him Manny. You know,
yes.
I call him Manny. But welcome. So glad that you said yes to this conversation.
Sean, of course.
We are excited. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Manny.
No, it was my pleasure. So So go ahead, Tracy.
No, I was just gonna say that we are excited. We both read the book. When I started the book, I was telling one of my other girlfriends about it, and I said, I can't put it down. You feel like you're in the book. So awesome job. Yes. Hats off to you.
Yes.
Hats off to you.
And some of the things you brought back memories, you know, when
Definitely.
you talk about the Sugar Bowl and things like that, you brought back memories, and some of the things is like, oh, I forgot about that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
yes.
it was like, and I'm not a big biography person. You know what I'm saying? Like reading biographies, I don't usually get past the first couple of chapters, but this, I was like, I didn't want to put it down. One night it was like 3:00 in the morning. I was like, I gotta get up early. Let me put this down.
Yes.
So I'm so excited that you decided to do this and share your life. You shared your life with us in this book.
Definitely.
No, I did. It was very vulnerable. It was a very vulnerable project. It was very cathartic is the word I like to use. You know, I came undone a few times. Book, you know.
Yeah. And your cousin Trey, that was one of my boys. Yeah. Trey was one of my boys. Oh my goodness. Just the Burton Street days, I call it. Burton Street days. All right. So we do have some questions, but we're gonna let it flow at the same time. Okay, so we may have more questions in between, or we may not even ask all the questions because depending on how we let it flow. But the first question is, explain how you came up with the title of the book.
So, first of all, you know, it's really an honor to be here with you all. You know, like you are, I think the first like official conversation that I've had with someone from Waterbury around the book. So this is an honor, you know. So I came up with the title. Basically, like a while ago, I read this book called The Warmth of Other Suns, right? So basically the book is, it was like a New York Times bestseller. It came out, I believe, in like 2012. It was like on the Oprah's book list. And it was basically talking about like the travels of Black Americans from the South, migrating from the South to different parts, up north, Midwest, West Coast. And the author of the book is a woman by the name of Dr. Isabel Wilkerson, who's I believe, a history professor. And so she's a historian, and she was like, telling these stories about Blacks leaving the Jim Crow South for different opportunities. And she had like these very intricate details about, why Blacks from certain states in the South went to certain cities up north, because it had to do with like the sophistication of the railroad systems, or the highway systems weren't as sophisticated. So she was breaking all of this down, and then she was, and in some cases she had interviews with people who were, by that time in their 80s, 90s, who remember the time of having left, whether it was Mississippi to go to Chicago, and like all of these kinds of stories. So when I read the book, it immediately made me think about my family, right? It made me think about my family and them leaving North Carolina. And there were two waves of family members that left North Carolina to come north. Right. But that book started me thinking about my own journey. So like she coined the term, as far as I remember, she coined the term the Great Migration, or at least I came to know of the term the Great Migration as Isabel Wilkerson's way of describing the migration of Black Americans from the South, to places like Detroit, Chicago, New York City, Oakland, Los Angeles, blackening these cities, as they will call it, some people will call it. So the Great Migration is a concept that's pretty well known, but I don't think a lot of us look at ourselves as part of that history.
Right. Wow. Awesome. Well, yeah, when we think about it, it was a migration. It definitely was a migration. All right. So when you started doing your research, and everything in your family, and coming across a lot of the, I'll say surprises, maybe, because it seems like some of it was surprising to you in the book, but in the same breath, it wasn't, because then it kind of explained why some of the characteristics people had in the family.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to like a lot of I'm sorry. So it speaks to a lot of the like inherent trauma that, us as Black folks we've inherited, you know what I mean? And so a lot of that trauma has been like suppressed, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of our characteristics, a lot of our customs, a lot of things that may have been passed down from generation is not really fully understood by a lot of us, because we don't talk about, historically, our ancestors don't really talk about the past and like how things were when they grew up. And I mean, I can understand now as an adult, as a historian myself, I can understand why, because you got to think about it. Like my family, they grew up. My grandmother was born in the middle of Jim Crow, like literally 1920, like the middle point of Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. And then like the first 40 years of her life was Jim Crow until she left to come to Waterbury in the 1960s. So for 40 years of my grandmother's life, having born in the Jim Crow and then lived 40 years, all her adult years in Jim Crow, the segregated South, dealing with all kinds of like systemic legal oppression. Like it wasn't illegal for these white men to do certain things to Black men or to Black women. You know what I mean? It wasn't illegal. So what would happen a lot of times is, things will happen to people in our families and they wouldn't talk about it, right? They wouldn't talk about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they kept that just out of embarrassment or whatever, just trying to like forget about it, etc. But it always comes up. It always resurfaces some kind of way, but these are kinds of like, this is such a big part of the history of all of us, of all Black Americans. We all have these secrets. Like I don't know if secrets is the right word, but we all have this method of not talking about, you know,
Yeah.
our past and our trauma. So to your point, you know, the things that were surprising to me, you know, a lot of it had to deal with elders in my family who were the same way, or something that they experienced that we didn't know about, or we came to find out later. And you know, it's just untreated trauma, untreated
trauma. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right, it happens in all families, unfortunately. And reading this, you take people there. You feel like you're in the book, not just being that we grew up in Waterbury, like Sean said, being on the Sugar Bowl, different places that you mentioned, Long Hill, different areas that things happen. When you're reading this book, you honestly don't want to put it down. You're engulfed, and it kind of makes you reset yourself to say, hey, let me start paying attention to my family and my history, which is also a good thing. I need to gift this book to somebody. I've read it. It's touched me. And I just want to say thank you again, because it is like having somebody from our own hometown doing this and us celebrating you, you know? So we say thank you to that, because it does. It opened up doors. It gets us to thinking. You know, a lot of times we start somewhere and we don't finish it. So thank you for that. So hopefully this reaches many more people, our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and our nephews. You know, everybody needs to sit down and read this and keep in touch with their people. Keep in touch. So thank you for that, Manny. It's amazing. Talk a little bit about your mental health, or your, you know, the influences. You talk about it in the book, you know, your professors, your teachers. You talked about some of the challenges that you endured. How did you keep your focus? How did you keep your wits about you? Because this book is really deep, and I don't know, you know, sitting here reading it, I couldn't wait. Like Sean said, I was excited to talk to you. So how did you stay focused? How did you keep your eye on the prize?
You know, like this might sound cliche, but like the only way I thought about this, I think about this question a lot. I think about this, and you know, there's only one answer to this question, right? You know, it was faith. It was faith. It was, you know, me hitting my head against the wall so hard, so many times, right? And I was a hard head kid. I was always banging my head. So, you know, it just got to a point where, I hit rock bottom in Georgia. There's no other way to put it. You know, but at a young age, I moved to Atlanta, and having, so many things happen like at a really pivotal age for me. And it was like the death of like really close friends and people that I grew up with. And then it was like coming to the realization about my biological father. And, you know, like all of this happened at once. It was like the death of Chris Love. You know, even though I didn't grow up with Chris Love or anything, like I didn't really get to know Chris Love until I was like a teenager. And for whatever reasons, he took to me. You know, he would see me, and he would stop his car, jump out of his car, and talk to me like I was one of his peers, even though he was a lot older than me, and, you know, on the way to doing big things. And so, you know, he left an impression on me that's hard for me to like really, even all these years later, for me to really fully explain, you know, what it was he did for me. And so, you know, to lose him, to lose, you know, so like Rhaegar, you know, people that I grew up with, and then, like I said, like coming to the realization about my biological father and how he passed away. And then like just, you know, my life was at a crossroads, right? And because I really wanted to do something different. I wanted to do things different, but I didn't have no resources. I have no access.
Template.
Right. Right, exactly. Like, you know, Chris provided a template in a lot of ways, but you know, it was still not, it wasn't attainable for me at that time. You know, but he planted something in me to make me believe that it was possible. And he, by doing it, but also like with a sense of urgency, explaining to me that I could do it. Well, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to take, you know, there was nothing.
No interest at all.
Right. He could have easily just, you know, but for whatever reasons, he he saw different.
Mm-hmm.
So when I moved to Georgia, man, I hit rock bottom. It's just like I just hit rock bottom, and I got, I got locked up, and really honestly, that situation was like, I hate to say this because I'm not advocating mass incarceration or imprisonment or anything like that. I think it's terrible. It's traumatic,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a silver lining in it. The silver lining in it was it made me sit my ASS down. I was forced to sit down. I was forced to think about everything. I was 1,000 miles away from home, right? So there was no chance that the people that came through them doors was somebody that I knew from the Sugar Bowl,
Right.
There was no chance that one of my relatives, one of my childhood friends was coming through them doors. Not only that, there was just the cultural differences, the lingo, everything was different. So I'm like, what is going on? You know what I'm saying? And like they put me in a bind. And so, I put my head on the floor. I put my face on the floor. You know what I'm saying? And asking and begging and trying to understand life, trying to understand what my purpose was, what this purpose was. And I wanted to understand even before that, I wanted to understand, my purpose in life. I wanted to understand we people of faith, right?
Yeah.
Historically, we are people of faith, right? So, that's the bottom line. Like that's the template. People of faith. So for me, I started to explore the options, what made the most sense for me, what was going to work for me. And, and having been a product of the 90s and Malcolm X and like seeing how his life was transformed when he accepted Islam, and, growing up in the 90s, he was a folk hero for many of us. And so, so I was inclined to that because he resonated so much with me. This is a person from the streets that was cast off. And not that I liken myself to him at all, but I mean, I think a lot of us who were from the streets and who was running around and all of that, I think he was the, if you decided that you wanted to change your life, that's where you looked at him because he did it. I mean, he did everything in the streets. You know what I'm saying? Like he was involved with everything. So you saw the transformation in him. So for me, just having hit rock bottom and trying to figure out as a person of faith and as a believer in God, what should I be doing? How can I worship? I was inclined to Islam. And I'm telling you, that's the thing. And I'm not sitting here trying to say that that's everybody's path. That's what did it for me.
Right.
That's what did it for me. And I'm telling you, there's like whatever else I could point to, it was that was the foundation. That was the foundation.
So I'm glad you said that. Yeah, go ahead, Trey.
No, I was just gonna say that that's a good thing that you took that and it didn't let it be a negative. And then when you allowed it, like you said, you hit rock bottom. As you read the book, the steps in front of you, the people that he put in front of you to help you along your path, and we all have them. It's just, do we want to listen? Do we want to follow?
Right.
And you did that. You know what I mean? You listened to the professors. You got the assistance from Chris Love, your cousin Tracy. You know what I mean? You had people that you looked up to, that you paid attention to when the time was right. So that's definitely a blessing. And like you said, everybody's blessing is not the same, but we got to pay attention when it's time. And you did. You did.
And that phrase, the teacher shows up when the student is ready. You know what I'm saying? And so, like you said, you put your head on the floor. You knew there was nothing else that you can do but pray. Right? And that if you prayed, that means you surrendered. That means you surrendered and you opened up the door for people to just guide you and protect you.
So, I didn't have no choice. I was a 20-year-old kid 1,000 miles away from home. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't have no choice. I'm in the belly of the beast for real. You know what I'm saying? And like, so, I didn't have no choice. And, Man, I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful, and that's my answer. That's
Right.
that's my answer to that question.
Period. Period. So the other thing too is once you got out, right? And you kind of like just said, you know what, I'm changing my life forever from this point on, right? Well, literally in there, when you were in the belly, that's when you started changing your life.
Right.
And so when you started and you decided to, because there's a lot of things that still happen even after that, right? But when you went to Egypt, right? When you went to Egypt, and was it like, tell us a little bit, even though you explained it a little bit in the book, but tell us a little bit about what that meant once you hit the ground, the sand, right?
Okay.
Once you hit that sand.
I was there with him. I went with him.
I know, that's what I'm
I
saying.
was there.
Right.
I was right there
and
with
I know
you.
we kind of like we probably gonna go back and forth, right? But because you brought up faith, and that was the catalyst for your change, and that was the catalyst that you held on to. That was what you held on to, knowing that life was going to be better. You knew that.
Let me keep it 100 with you real quick.
All right, that's what we want.
So when I came home, right? Like, so, you know, okay, I won't get into that, but like it was incredible how I even got out. Right?
Okay.
Like you read.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was
keep that. Let them read that. That was amazing. That's all we'll say. That was amazing.
Read the book.
And get kudos to you for that. Kudos to you for that, because not many people would have done what you did and said what you said. But go ahead. I apologize.
So when I got out, right, I you know, like I was thinking, I'm like, okay, I'm going back home to Connecticut because, you know, that's just what I know. I need people to pat me on the back and rub my head, and you know what I'm saying, and patch me up. You know,
to hug you.
Yeah. I need to get back in that nest. Right. And so when I got out, Georgia pardon and parole folks was like, no, you're not going nowhere. You're going to stay here, and you're going to pay us our restitution, and you're going to come and you're going to check in every month, and you're going to, you know, I'm like, damn, like, you know what I'm saying?
They just won't let go.
Relentless. So I mean, you know, I'm working at Denny's. I'm like third, like, oh my God, like I'm struggling. I never struggled this hard in my life. So they got me messed up down there, man. I'm struggling, man. And I'm like, I'm sleeping on folks' couch, folks' floors, and like not, you know, like paying bills and like not knowing where my next meal. Man, I was messed up. So, you know, but at the same time, I grew up on the Sugar Bowl. So I got, you know, there's certain instincts that I have.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And there's certain, you know, there's certain accesses and resources that I'm gonna pull from if necessary. And so, you know, I found that when I was in Georgia, you know what I mean, just as like a means to survival. And, you know, and nothing that I don't regret anything that I did. You know what I'm saying? I just don't.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
it shapes you.
Yeah, you know, but it was just, for me, everything is just about, you know, just a stepping stone. You know what I'm saying? And so I found myself, you know, shortly after I got out, like after like busting my butt to working these odd jobs, and then I finally kind of like, after, I don't know, maybe close to a year after being out, maybe about 6 months, a few months, I was in a decent spot. Right. And, you know, I was still working, but I still had, you know, little, you know what I'm saying, little ways to get money, whether it was like little hustles or here and there and all of that kind of stuff. And and then I ended up like, you know, like I had an affinity with the music. And so I was, you know, doing music and stuff like that. And so, you know, and then that started to open up doors, you know, and so, doors started to open, and then it was like, you know, like a little buzz in Atlanta, and then even in California, I'm speedballing because I'm going like there's
that's all right.
Speeding.
We know, we read it.
So some doors started to open up that led me to, from Atlanta to California. And then when I got to California, doors was opening up for real. And then, but I was like, you know what? I can't go in this direction. Because if I go in this direction, after everything, like the last 4 years of what I just went through and understanding, you know what I'm saying? Like what got me through that. If I go this way, I'm gonna lose all of that. I'm not, I could say this in hindsight, but at the time I didn't really have these words. I just was like, nope, I'm not going that way. I'm going back.
Something wasn't right though. Something wasn't right.
But didn't feel right. Exactly.
Yeah. I was gonna say your gut.
Didn't feel right. And so I left. I left California and I came back to Waterbury, and people in Waterbury who know, and there's people who know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this, and people who I was like working with, to try to get these connections to the music industry. They were like, man, what do you mean you back home? You coming home? I'm like, man, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not okay with that. And so I just was like really serious about wanting to explore, what it was that got me through that, that time in Georgia. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, I said, I want to continue these studies. I want to, further my education, my curiosity. I want to find out what. And so I said, I was talking to some people who had connections overseas, and they were like, well, because I wanted to learn Arabic and I wanted to learn from the source.
Okay.
So people were like, well, some people that I knew in Waterbury and New Haven had connections to places in Egypt, for example. And they were like, well, if you go there are these institutions that are for foreigners, Arabic institutions for foreigners. There's a lot of Americans there. There's people from different parts of the world there. We recommend it. I know so-and-so was there. So I met so-and-so and talked to them about it. And then before I knew it, I was online booking a flight and going.
Amazing. And so that's amazing.
That's stepping out on faith.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then the crazy part was this was right out, like right before the Gulf War, like the war has started. And people were, I think, some people are maybe geographically challenged and thinking like Iraq was so close to Egypt, but it wasn't. It was, but it wasn't. Sort of in the same region, but there's a body of water that separates
in between. Right.
So people were like, "Why, you going? Why?" Like they thought I was bugged. They thought I was crazy. And I'm like, and he's like, "Yo, but aren't you concerned?" I'm like, "Look, man, I grew up. You know where I grew up. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm more. There's a lot to worry about where I grew up.
More over there. Yeah. Right. Where I came from.
Right. So I'm like, so I ended up going. And I was just like, I don't know when I'm coming back, but I'm gonna go and see. I trust the advice that I got from folks who have been there and who knew the lay of the land. I trusted what they had told me. So I went. I said, yo, if I don't like it, I'm coming back. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna check it out. If I don't like it, I'm coming back. So I went, and then like,
you liked it. You liked it. You fell right into place, not even knowing the language at one point. Like, again, let me not get too much into the book because we need people to read it, but very interesting. And awesome. Like I swear I was there. I was with you when you were sitting waiting for them to give you your room and they wasn't. I was yelling.
Yeah.
This man a room.
Right. He's like, listen, they get ready to charge you too much. So yeah. And that's another testament on, I just keep going back to the faith piece. That's another testament of living by faith and walking by faith, right? Because you met someone that, and without giving it away, but that helped you out, saw you, came and helped you out right away. And then that developed into a great relationship and so on and so forth. And then you knew that you were going to be all right.
I mean, literally right when I got off the plane, it was literally right as I got off the plane and got from the airport to the place where, everything was
to the school.
You know what I'm saying? Right, to the institute, and this kid just popped out of nowhere. It was surreal. It was surreal and even when I think about it now, like I don't, it was like a matter of faith, stepping out of faith, out on faith, and there's things happening. And like I always say, I tell, it's like there's a God involved.
Absolutely.
There's a God
Mhm.
involved. You know what I'm saying? Like if you know me and you know what I've been through, and like people, like nobody. One of my high school guidance, I don't know if I put this in the book, but one of my high school guidance counselors said to me one day, she said, by the time you're 21, she said, you're gonna have a criminal record as long as your arm if you're not dead.
I think you did.
That was devastating.
Something you did allude to. Somebody
is.
said something like that to one of the teachers or something.
That's a devastating thing.
How do you say that? Right.
Yeah, but if I'm real, she wasn't off base. She was, if I'm being real.
Right.
But as an adult and as an educator, you still shouldn't say that. That's
enough. Yeah.